Today, I'm going to show you how to add a coal load to the 16-ton mineral wagon. Welcome back to Newton Grove. If you are a new subscriber, thank you so much for joining the channel. And if you haven't subscribed just yet, click that button down there and hit the grey notification bell so that you know every single time that I upload videos. You don't want to miss anything if you model anything to do with 7mm O gauge. Also, while you're there, give this video a big thumbs up because it does help with the ranking. Now, in my last video, I took the 16-ton mineral wagon and heavily weathered it. And if you haven't watched that video just yet, there is a link just up here and I'll put it at the end of the video as well. I'll show you how I did that in extensive detail. And you now have two options after you've done the weathering. Option number one, you can leave it as a wonderfully detailed weathered wagon, or option number two, you can fill it with a coal load. And that's exactly what I'm going to do today. And this here is all we need to complete the job. Over here we have some packaging foam, and you get this anytime you buy anything from, say, Argos or Dunelm or anything like that. Now, packaging foam is better to use because, number one, it's a bit more durable. I find it's easy to cut, it's very soft, it doesn't break easily, and unlike polystyrene foam, it's not messy. So packaging foam is the one that you want to use. You'll also need a sharp knife to cut the foam with, a pencil, a brush. Later on, when we get some PVA down, we will need some acrylic paint, some black, a few different size brushes, one for the paint, one for some PVA, a pencil to mark the foam up with. Pencils score probably a bit better than pens, especially with this particular stuff. You're also going to need a pipette to apply your PVA in your typical way that you do with ballast. And finally, we're going to need some coal, and I'll take you through all of these in individual steps. So, let's get to it. Step number one, of course, is working out our internal dimensions. Now, I'm not too sure if there's any discrepancies between a kit-built wagon and a ready-to-run built wagon, but let's just assume that there's not. I have pre-measured this, and the width is 53mm, the length is 113mm, and the depth is 30mm. Now, we're not going to cut our packaging foam to 30mm because otherwise when we put the coal on top, it's going to give us a massive big mound, which of course we don't want. So I'm probably going to make mine around 20 or 23. But those are the first dimensions you're going to need to cut a piece of foam to fit into this. So let's do that. And in the spirit of here's one we did earlier, here's one I did earlier. And you'll see here that it actually just fits into this wagon very snug. Very, very snug. It fits in really perfectly, and you can see there it's not all the way to the top because this is only 23mm high. So we've got loads of room there to add coal, but still see the sides of the wagon, which is what you want. Because if you look at archival photographs or archival films of these wagons fully loaded, you will notice that they were never piled on top, so they were spilling out all over the place. Next step now, of course, is the painting. Now, painting, in my opinion, is all important because whilst you can put your coal load down, if you've got a bright white piece of foam underneath, if you've got any spaces at all, you're going to see it. And it's easier if we paint the foam now rather than trying to patch up those holes later on. Now, I recommend you using the Humbrol acrylic paints over here. This is matte black number 33, and brush it on. Never use spray cans at all because if you've ever tried spray paint on any kind of foam, you'll notice how it loves to disintegrate. Now, packaging foam is a bit more durable, but you're not going to get the best results. So get yourself one of these and a brush, paint it on until you've got a good coating over the entire thing. And here's one we did earlier. As you can see, I've just given the surface a nice thick coat of matte black paint so that when I put the coal load down later on, we won't see any white protruding through. It's basically exactly the same thing you would do when building a layout where you would paint your base ground cover brown before putting on scatter materials and static grass, just to make sure you don't see any shiny white surfaces underneath. This is the exact same reason. Little pro tip for you. The next step is adding the coal. Now, let's talk about coal for a moment before we get into this particular demonstration. A lot of modelers think that they need to add real coal, and so they'll go down to their local heritage railway, ask for a lump of coal, or take one, bring it home, crush it up, and put it into their wagon. There's a few issues with real coal though. Number one, it's very heavy. So if you fill your entire wagon full of a load of coal, that wagon is now incredibly heavy. And if you've got 5, 10 or more of these, that's a very heavy train in any gauge or scale, which is why I also recommend doing it this way with the foam. My tip though is to not use coal, well, kind of coal, use ash. That's right, ash. And let's face it, if you go to any heritage railway, there is an abundance of it lying around. In fact, they can't get rid of it fast enough. Ash, of course, is burnt coal, so the breaking up process has already happened for you. You don't need to bring a piece of coal home and bash it together and get the pieces scale and fine. It's practically done for you because the smoke box has done its job. Disclaimer time though. If you are going to go off to a heritage railway and get coal or ash to use in your model, always ask a volunteer or a member of staff if you can go off and get some. Never under any circumstances walk into a locomotive yard and help yourself. Not only is it dangerous, but it's trespassing. Okay? You've been warned, so do the right thing. And now that little public service announcement is over and done with, it's time to put the first load of ash onto our surface using PVA glue. Now, of course, this is not rocket science. Get yourself some PVA glue and put it all over the foam. Just a nice, good, liberal coating. Make sure that you get it all the way to the edges because you want to make sure that the coal takes to the entire thing. You don't want to have your edges exposed. So just give it a nice, good, thick coat of PVA. Once that is done, simply sprinkle the surface with some coal. Make sure that you get it right to the edges. Tap it all the way down and press it down as well as you're going along. Make sure you get pieces covering the entire area. Now this is slightly tedious, and you will find that you'll have to manually put a few bits and pieces to the sides because it won't do everything you ask of it. But the result, of course, is pleasing. And as we build the layers up over time, the edges will start to disappear. But of course, this is why we painted the surface of the polystyrene foam matte black. Now, I won't lie to you, even though you're dealing with ash, it is still very dusty and very dirty, so your fingers will need washing after this process, as will your workbench. Now that we're letting that dry, what we do is we mix up our 50-50 mix of PVA with water and a few drops of dishwashing liquid to break the surface tension, because apparently that's a thing. So all you have to simply do is once this is mixed up, you get your pipette, soak up the PVA mixture and add it over there to your coal load. Once you have applied your PVA mixture to all your coal and built it up the way that you want to, either as much or little as you desire, you then put it aside and wait for it to dry. Now, in my experience, I have found that it can take several days for it to dry properly. Now, that depends on the mix. It also depends on the weather. At the moment I'm recording this, it's the tail end of winter. It actually took about 2 days for that to fully dry. But the results are well worth it, and in time-honored fashion, here's one we made earlier. And you can see here that's, well, number one, it's all there, and it looks really, really good. But of course, the test is, how does this look in the wagon? Let's find out. All right, let's just put this in. Well, there you go. That looks absolutely fantastic. Very simple, very easy to achieve, and highly realistic. And in O gauge, 7mm, the larger the scale, the more detail you need. Well, I mean, look, you can't get any more detail than that, can you? I actually like how the ash is naturally a decent size for O gauge anyway. I have not had to break any of this stuff up at all to get this result. Now, if I wanted to, I could always go over the top with some weathering powders. If, for example, you haven't diluted the PVA properly or add the dishwashing liquid, you might find that your surface could be a little bit shiny. If that's the case, just get some powders and just dull it down. Don't spray it with any matte varnishes, especially spray, otherwise you could affect the foam underneath. But just tone it down if you feel you have to. But I am very, very happy with that. Well, that's it. I hope that you found this little step-by-step tutorial very useful. Hopefully you've actually got quite an abundance of these wagons that you can go off there and do a very similar thing yourself. Just please be mindful of the fact that when you get the ash from the railway, always ask. Do me a favour now, leave me a comment below. What do you think of what I've just shown for you, or have you got a different technique that works better for you? I'm interested to hear all type of thoughts. Just because this is my way doesn't mean you have to take that as absolute gospel. The good thing about modelling is we do things that we want to do based upon ideas we've got or tips we have, and then we make it our own. But either way, leave me a comment below. I would love to hear from you. Give this video a big thumbs up, like and subscribe if you haven't already. I would love to have you on this channel. Right, I'm off for a cup of tea and I'm going to wash my hands because they're rather filthy, and I'll see you next time on Newton Grove.